I've not done true crime in a little while. So I thought I would go ahead and do one. Um, this is a little bit well known, but not as well known as it should be. Not a lot of people cover it. I understand why. It's very traumatic. A lot of people can't cover it. It's about the, and trigger warning all through this. Always with my true crime videos. But it's about Sylvia Marie Likens. Sylvia Likens. She was age 16 when she died. Was actually murdered. She was born on January 3rd, 1949, and her death date was October 26, 1965. She was an American teenager, and this happened in Indianapolis, Indiana. She was tortured and murdered by her caregiver, Gertrude Brancewiski. And I'm going to call her Gertrude. Most people do, and I think you can understand why. But she turned all the neighborhood children against her, against Sylvia, and basically they abused her in every way possible. Beaten, starved, dehydrated, belittled, neglected, sexually abused, you name it. She had burns, scald marks, eroded skin. When they did the autopsy, there was over 150 wounds. Her sister Jenny was forced to participate in her mistreatment, or she was also abused. That's another thing that happened, was if you didn't participate, you were abused. So that's part of how she kept people from standing up against her. And in my opinion, none of them got enough time. Gertrude was found guilty of first-degree murder, and was sentenced to life in prison, but she was released on parole in 1985. And what makes this sickening is her mom and dad, I think they were cornies or something. Anyway, they couldn't take care of their kids. They were working, and this woman had a good reputation. Yes, they were carnival workers, and they had other kids. I don't know if they were adult by then or what, but she was the third of 5 children, and they were on the road, and their check was a couple of days late getting to Gertrude, and that's when she started being mean to them. Up until then, she was at the very least not abusive, and in a lot of times she was actually good to all of them. But the Indianapolis Police Department called it the most sadistic case they had ever investigated. And the senior investigator said that in 35 years that he had served with the Indianapolis Police, this was the worst case he had ever investigated. The most sadistic, the most horrific. There was only 5 defendants, although there were more people involved, but that's who they could have proved had done anything. But there's a lot of stories about more people than that being involved. But after deliberating for 8 hours, the panel of 8 men and 4 women, which I don't know why that matters, but there you go, were found Gertrude guilty of first-degree murder, and they recommended a sentence of life imprisonment. Paula, who was her daughter, was found guilty of second-degree murder. Honestly, I think it should have been first-degree murder. I don't care how old she was at the time, because I think she was at least a teenager. So she knew better. And the others, John, who was her brother, and Gertrude's son, and Hobbs and Hubbard were found guilty of manslaughter. I think they should have been found guilty of at least second-degree murder, if not first-degree murder, because they knew better. But I don't know that they deserved life in prison, simply because the Gertrude would have beat them too, and they knew it. So, and so Richard Hobbs, Coy Hubbard, and John Badisky Jr. Received sentences of 2 to 21 years to be served in the Indiana Reformatory. Gertrude and Paula were retried because there was so much media surrounding the case. They didn't think they could receive a fair trial. Paula was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter. Well, she pled guilty, to keep from facing a retrial. She was sentenced to a term of between 2 and 20 years for her part in the abuse and murder. She tried to escape twice in prison twice in 1971, and she was still released in December 1977. That makes no sense to me. Gertrude was again convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Over the course of the following 14 years, Gertrude became known as a model prisoner, and I don't care. She worked in the prison sewing shop and was known as somewhat of a den mother to younger female inmates, becoming known to some within the prison by the nickname Mom. By the time of Gertrude's ultimate parole in 1985, she had changed her name to Nadine Van Fossen, a combination of her middle name and maiden name apparently, and described herself as a devout Christian. And I don't care if you convert during prison. I mean, get your soul or whatever, I guess, but to me, you should still serve time in prison, the time you have left. Everyone was upset in Indiana when they heard that she was going to be paroled. Jenny Likens, who was her sister, and the other family members vehemently protested against any prospect of her release, but long story short, she was released. She says that she regrets that she died, and she wished it all could be undone. She also minimized her responsibility for any of her actions, and made some "I was on drugs" excuse. But yet she supposedly took full responsibility. I don't know how you can skirt blame and take full responsibility at the same time. Gertrude relocated to Iowa after her 1985 release from prison. She never accepted full responsibility, which to me shows that she wasn't really remorseful. Paula also assumed a new identity She worked as an aide school counselor for 14 years. That's scary to me anyway. In Colorado, Iowa. She changed her name to Paula Pace. She concealed her criminal history. She was fired in 2012 when the school discovered her true identity. She reportedly lives in a small town in Iowa. She's married and has 2 children. The baby daughter to whom she had given birth while awaiting trial in 1966, and whom she named after her mother, was later adopted. They dropped the case against Gertrude's 15-year-old daughter, Stephanie, because she agreed to turn state's evidence against the other defendants. But, some of the stories talk about how 15 or 20 people would come and abuse, mainly Sylvia, but to a lesser extent Jenny. I mean, she survived at least, but she was starved and had some bruises and stuff, so she was treated bad too. But basically, everyone agrees that none of them got enough time. But honestly, they didn't have proof for everyone that was involved. So I understand why they couldn't prosecute everyone, but I think it's a bunch of hooey. Of course, it was at a time when they let a lot of violent criminals out on probation or parole. So, but, I don't think Gertrude got enough time. There's not, without doing a really deep dive, I could probably make a 15-minute video like I did, like I'm doing right now, or an hour-long one with a lot of background information that really doesn't affect the case. You don't really need to know a lot about Gertrude, and I'm sure there are deep dives out there if you want to, but to me, she was a piece of garbage, and that's all you really need to know. And with that said, I hope you have a nice rest of your day if you can after hearing this despicable story. Okay, bye.